here we are. We have our in-person, we have people online. Everyone who's here, thank you for joining us. Good morning. Welcome to the World Urban Pavilion, powered by Daniels. My name is Jake Cohen. I am the COO of the Daniels Corporation. I'm going to be your host for this morning's event. So the World Urban Pavilion, powered by Daniels, what an appropriate venue to hold a discussion around the future of smart city building for everyone. This knowledge exchange hub, a collaboration between UN Habitat, Urban Economy Forum, and CMHC, is just that. A place where best practices, innovation, and research can be shared to help create a sustainable, inclusive urban developments around the world. Among the social development goals set out by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs is making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. This pavilion, where we are right now, is a step towards achieving those goals. Today, the Daniels Corporation is proud to partner with AccessNow to make a presentation on the future of smart city building for everyone. For all of us at Daniels, smart is more than just a buzzword. It's more than referring to technological advancements when it comes to home building or home automation. Smart also means intelligent and perceptive practices that address the needs of what really makes communities thrive, people. And in keeping with that thought, and on our commitment towards reconciliation, the Daniels Corporation acknowledges the inherent relationship the Indigenous peoples have with the land, water, and air as part of their sacred relationship and connection to Mother Earth. We remain committed at Daniels to educating ourselves and understanding the truth about our shared history with Indigenous peoples. As we work and build in communities across the Greater Toronto Area, we acknowledge these are treaty lands and part of our traditional territories of several Indigenous nations. For thousands of years, the GTA has been the traditional gathering place shared by many nations, including the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the shared territory of the Neutrals, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. The GTA is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and we are grateful for their connection and the opportunity to work and live with them in this territory we call home. Today, we celebrate coming together and the coming together of two dynamic forces. Our goal is a common goal: to improve the lives of the people with disabilities as they traverse the communities where they live, work, and play. The Daniels Corporation is well known for making bold commitments when it comes to quality of life in our communities that we build. Our Accessibility Designed Program, or ADP, is one of those examples. This revolutionary program focuses on improving design standards to make life easier for those with disabilities. We recognize that physical challenges exist for many people in their surroundings. To break those barriers, we have gave careful thought to how we could incorporate design details to make condominium ownership and rental living more inclusive for people of all abilities. Our ADP suites are designed and constructed beyond the accessibility standards of the Ontario Building Code and are available at no extra cost. We introduced this program in 2017 right here in Due East Condominiums, and in 2020, we welcomed our first residents to suites in this building, right upstairs where we are today. Now, our ADP suites are included in all of our Daniels vertical and low-rise communities where possible. This is part of our mission, to build a continuum of housing opportunities for everyone. And when I mean everyone, I mean everyone. From first-time home buyers, to forever home buyers, to student housing, to seniors housing, regardless of physical or intellectual abilities. The result is the creation of mixed income communities where residents of all qualities can thrive. It takes intentionality. It takes resources. It takes years of experience to successfully deliver complete and inclusive communities. Resources include community organizations that are aligned with the way we like to think as well. When this synergy happens, it gets us very excited at Daniels. We approach accessibility through the lens of inclusivity and belonging, and the focus on social equity. Through the creation of our ADP suites and our ADP efforts, we've looked to improve our program. And while we've done so, we've crossed paths with some amazing people and organizations. Among the fascinating individuals we've met on this journey, one was Luke Anderson. Hi, Luke. Co-founder and executive director of StopGap Foundation, which initiates community ramp projects. We were fortunate to meet Luke early in the creation of our ADP program. He provided invaluable guidance with roll-throughs of our existing Daniels condominiums. He reviewed and provided feedback of our early designs of our units and amenity layouts, and he participated in our official announcement of our ADP program back in 2017. Plus, and this is a very big plus, Luke introduced us to an incredible network of like-minded people who are working hard to create more accessible cities. I'm looking forward to having Luke join us up here later today on a panel discussion to discuss a little bit more about this topic. Another example of like-minded connecting organizations that we've connected with, several years ago, we developed a very unique partnership with L'Arche Toronto, which provides housing to people with intellectual disabilities as well as physical disabilities. Our discussion with L'Arche led to the creation of custom designing an 8-bedroom condominium within Artworks Tower in Regent Park, right next door. This was to meet the assisted living needs of the L'Arche constituents and their families. Most recently, we joined forces with an awesome organization called AccessNow, which since 2016 has built a robust go-to information resource for the disabled community that maps the accessibility of built environments. In-person evaluation and reviews by AccessNow are featured in 35 countries around the world. The organization has developed a platform built for the community, by the community, and led by people who have accessibility challenges who can teach us more about how the spaces can be improved. All of us in Daniels recognize that life happens as much within a neighborhood as within individual suites. And as city builders, we want to learn how we are doing. Are we creating accessible spaces in our communities where people shop, eat, socialize, and play? Can these spaces truly work for people with accessibility challenges? With that in mind, we jumped at a chance to partner with AccessNow to map Regent Park's accessibility. We wanted to understand what we're doing well and where we need to improve so we can implement lessons learned in all our communities moving forward. To do that, we engage residents of Regent Park with varying abilities to help guide us on this journey. Many of our accessibility map mission participants are here with us today, so thank you for being here. We would now like to play a short video that showcases that awesome day and the map mission. So I'll take it away, video.
All right, everyone, I hope you can all hear me. I'm really excited to kick off the Regent Park map mission together. And our job is to do one thing: map the accessibility of everything we see. So today we are here in Regent Park on a map mission. So we're looking at the accessibility of stores, we're looking at the parks and the community centers, and really anything that we come across. And we're asking questions about how accessible are these spaces for people of all different types of abilities. What we've done at AccessNow is created a mobile app that allows people to search, rate, and discover the accessibility of places around the world. The motivation is to create a platform that highlights the importance of accessibility through the lenses of people with lived experience. So really what we're trying to do is just create transparency and make it easier for people to just live their lives.
Well, yeah, that's got enough room, but this open. It's not very easy. You got to back up.
In the comments, we can write how the gates at the dog park were a little bit tricky, not very accessible.
Okay.
I think what's really exciting about the partnership here with Daniels is that when we started kind of early conversations about how could we work together, it became really clear that we both have this shared interest in community life, in understanding the places that people live, work, learn, and play.
The partnership with AccessNow is an amazing partnership, and it really came from expanding on our accessibility program. At Daniels, we created a program called the Accessible Design Program, where we really focused on our suite interiors. We focused on our kitchens and our bathrooms, and then we wanted to make sure that people within those units have accessible features that they can move around without barrier. So the relationship with AccessNow and the partnership with them is about taking it beyond just the buildings themselves and taking it out to the communities.
Usually, before we go out, one of my friends go and do the mapping. Now I have the app, so before we go, I just check the area, and that's helping saving time, and I don't have to do the mapping myself.
What's so powerful about map mission events like today is that you really get a sense that it doesn't have to be every person out on their own. And so bringing the Regent Park community together in partnership with Daniels, I think is a really powerful moment.
Okay, so I'm marking down that the park overall is accessible. We've seen a bunch of ramps that help ease of access even into the grassy area and everything like that. And we'll go on and do a couple of the other areas.
The mapping experience today was incredible to see residents moving around the neighborhood, looking at the different spaces, the amenities that have been created, and really being able to see people who live in the neighborhood provide commentary on that. That to me is the way we need to be changing and helping enhance the neighborhood grow and make it more accessible for everybody.
If we consider the power of every single instance in which someone shared an experience related to the accessibility in their own community, and we combine all of those instances, we can start to understand how people interact with their communities. Those insights is really what we hope inspires the next generation of smart city building to design spaces that truly are reflective of the diversity of needs that people have. Our goal is to map every city on the planet. In collaboration with partners like Daniels, we're that much closer to seeing that happen.
I think that this is a beginning, and we got a lot of work ahead of us to continue.
It's not a destination, it's a journey. And it's days like this where we learn a little bit more about how people engage with their own communities.
Amazing. Very, very good stuff. So you've heard from me, you've seen the video, but now I'd like to introduce Maayan Ziv. Come on up to the stage, Maayan. It's time to turn it over to you. Maayan, founder and CEO of AccessNow. She's going to share a little bit more about the findings from the MAP mission.
All right. Okay, well, hello everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for coming today to learn a new perspective and celebrate with us. For us, this is quite a special day. So I was born with my disability. I have always looked at the world through this lens. And growing up and throughout my adolescence and even into my adult life, I was often told that I would be a consumer. I'd be a consumer of services, I'd be a consumer of equipment, of programming, and that in general my life would be designed around me, that people, professionals, knew what to do to make sure that I was accommodated, supported, that I could be independent, that I could live the life I wanted. But it was on their terms. And as I grew older and I found confidence in my own voice, and I engaged with other experts with lived experience, with disabilities, I learned a lot. I learned about how people live their lives, how people remake things and MacGyver things and adapt and create new solutions for themselves, not based on professional opinion, but based on need. based on lived experience, and based on creativity and ingenuity and resilience. And I realized that we have this amazing secret power within the disability community that not everybody knows about. At AccessNow, we believe so strongly in the philosophy of nothing about us without us. We know that there should be no service, no product, no city, no building, no nothing that should be designed without including the expertise and experiences of people with lived experience. And we believe that so full-heartedly that we developed our entire company around this model. We developed a company that showcases the agency, the creativity, the strength, the decades of experience that people with disabilities have to offer. And on our platform, what we do is simply that. We vocalize perspectives. We say, there's not one person, one professional, that could possibly imagine what it might be like for a newcomer to Canada who uses a wheelchair to show up in Regent Park and try to get along. Why not learn from people like Saleh, who I learned from, mapping on the day that we did together, what his experience in life is like, and how can we create a more inclusive experience for each one of us to get a sense of belonging, a sense of welcoming, and to really acknowledge the strengths that we each have. That's the power of the singular voice, the stories that we each have to carry. And often they come with those experiences, those moments that mark us, those challenges that we had to face, you know, the difficulties, the barriers that we've had to overcome. And that is not unique to disability. But we often shy away from those experiences. We shy away from challenge, from barriers, because it's uncomfortable. What we're doing here is putting a light on all of those instances and successes. We're highlighting every accessible experience, every engagement, every building that someone has been able to actually access, and we're flagging those that are not. We're putting a light on all the barriers that are often invisible to people that don't experience them on a day-to-day basis. There's a reason we do this. We do this because we know that we value what we measure. And we know that if we're going to create progress, if we're going to remove barriers, we've got to know what the land looks like today. We have to be able to concretely measure and understand what is it that people experience in their own communities. What are the barriers that stop people from being able to access employment, from being able to grab a coffee with a friend in a neighborhood, and being able to travel abroad, or to feel a sense of belonging in general to their communities? And so every instance that someone shares on the AccessNow app is one more instance where we get that much closer to truly being able to understand what it is that people are experiencing every day, because it's live. I'm just going to ask to get to the next slide. And in doing this, we had an amazing opportunity here in partnership with Daniels and with so many of you who actually came out on the MAP mission. Thank you for doing that and sharing your own perspectives. We learned. So what does it look like? Next slide, please. Well, let me tell you that in just under, it was about an hour and a half of mapping with between 20 and 36 people who just put their perspectives to use. We were able to generate over 831 new data points about how accessible Regent Park is. We observed over 55 new places from the perspective of lived experience, and 96 new reviews highlighting personal testimonials, observations, successes, and barriers. We took over 180 photos of entrances and stairways and washrooms, as sexy as they can be. And we generated 500 tags, 500 instances where people in this community observed an aspect of accessibility, an automatic door that can make a world of a difference for someone to be able to access a space. An elevator seems simple, but then also things that might not be as obvious, like lighting levels and sound levels, gender-neutral washrooms, and braille and digital menus and large print, and spaces that might offer ASL or are welcoming to service animals. These are the types of insights that we're able to collect. And we were able to observe 500 instances of those in Regent Park. To me, this is the beginning of something truly phenomenal. I should mention we also realized in doing this that 66% of the reviews were rated accessible. We looked at restaurants and we looked at storefronts and we looked at parks, we looked at healthcare facilities and education, all around us here. And in doing this, we're able to observe also what still needs to be done, where people are still experiencing barriers. And using this data, we can do something truly magical, which is inform what's next. So if this is the status quo today, if this is the lay of the land, how can we remove the barriers that we might have missed along the way? How can we determine which buildings to build next and where? How can we maybe think about where that next housing building should be? Should it be in an accessible neighborhood that amenities are also already working? And if we're choosing to build it in a new space, what around the neighborhood is already accessible to people and why? This is how we can use some of the data that we're generating at AccessNow. And the coolest thing is that it's all grassroots. It's all done in collaboration with people with lived experience, as the drivers, as the creators, not as the consumers, with agency. It's a revolutionary way of thinking about how we build our world. And we do it in partners like with Daniels. And I'd like to thank Daniels for this opportunity to have a conversation today about how we can develop and design inclusive cities of the future. And they're already happening all around us. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to the residents who came out and mapped with us. I learned so much from you. And I know we all did. You're the ones who literally mapped Regent Park. Thank you to my team at AccessNow for making this all come to life. And thank you to all of you for being here, to being open to listening to a new way, and hopefully being part of a more accessible and inclusive future. So with that, I'm really excited to get to the good stuff, which is a fireside conversation. I'm going to invite Jake back up onto the stage and Luke.
In order to kind of kick us off, I think what I will do is I'm going to ask Maayan and Luke to introduce each other. Let's let them try to describe the other person in your words. That way you can get a little bit more insight from someone else. Go for it.
Sure. Well, you haven't been 100% introduced yet, so I'll go first. Luke is someone that I've come to know over the course of being engaged in the city of Toronto and working to create a more accessible world for us all. He, as was mentioned, is the executive director and co-founder of the StopGap, which before I even knew who Luke was, I knew what a StopGap ramp was because I saw the colorful ramps in the city. He's a dynamic community builder, and he also has a knack for some contact improv. So that's my introduction for Luke.
And most recently, the harmonica.
Oh, the harmonica as well.
I didn't bring it with me, but it's been 2 years of pretty intense isolation. So my fridge has been the recipient of lots of honking. Yeah. Well, we just witnessed Maayan throwing down what I believe is an incredible superpower, the gift of really speaking in an incredible way. I'm just hanging on every word. I see some heads nodding, and I think you can understand the powerful voice that Maayan gifts the world, and her ability to shift perspectives and bring everybody in to a room like this, to bring people together using technology in an engaging way that that's easy, that's collaborative, and that has the capacity to create real change. So she does that with the products and the systems, the team that she pulls together, and with the words that she uses to do that as well. And I am always excited, inspired, and elevated. Yeah, elevated whenever I'm in the room with Maayan. So, and again, I see some heads nodding, agreeing that there's some people on board that feel the same. So
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, I'll pass it back to Maayan now. Describe what inclusion means to you.
So, I think for me, inclusion is really what it comes down to is a sense of belonging. It's the ability to show up, no questions asked, and be included. And it doesn't ask you, what's your problem, or where do you come from, or what do you need. It just welcomes you in. And that could be to a space, that could be to a product that doesn't ask you a question and just works. That's a universal experience, when you just use something and you just love it. It's designed to include you in the result. So you come into a space and the doors are open and you're not asked to go through the garbage entrance, and you're not told to, to apologize for who you are or how you've shown up that day. Those are all the side effects of not designing for inclusion. So for me, it's like this feeling you get from just knowing that you're okay, you're good, you're welcome, and you can thrive here. For me, that's what inclusion really is.
Yeah, Mia Mingus coined the term access intimacy to describe that feeling. And it's a hard feeling to describe. And I think they, in their essay that they wrote a number of years ago, really tried to capture the essence of that feeling when you arrive into a space or you engage in a conversation with someone and you're met with feeling comfortable, at ease, at peace, that all of your needs are met. Is it like, can you remember a time where or maybe today, you arrived here and you were, welcomed and you're given some yummy food and some a caffeinated beverage to get your day off on the right foot, and maybe you felt comfortable by the temperature in the room, the lighting, everything was sort of dialed in a way that met your needs. So to me, that's what inclusion is. It's this feeling. It's a feeling of belonging, of comfort, peace, ease, love, and understanding, where I don't have to put the effort into advocating for myself, and I guess, putting that extra effort and energy into making all of those needs happen. They're just there in a way that allows for spontaneity and independence.
Almost like a feeling of being with family who knows you, or knows your needs, or know what you're looking for. I think a lot of that comes from that inclusionary feeling, because they are aware of what makes you tick.
Totally. Access intimacy is something we can all experience. Yeah.
Excellent. And Maayan, back to you on the accessible features in Regent Park when you did the map mission. We heard the 69% accessible. What were some of the things or observations that you learned that you could share with the group today about what you saw in some of the particulars?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely obvious to everyone that all of the new buildings include kind of the assumption that they're all going to have an automatic door, which in most neighborhoods doesn't really happen. So that already is like a first introduction to, oh, okay, there's some mindfulness here. But I think, one of the interesting things that came up in conversation for us afterwards is, even if you build a space to be accessible, if the people who inhabit that space have not considered, what happens if you take all of your inventory and put it in the accessible washroom, what that does to the people who show up. So I think what we kind of came away with was the need to kind of go the step further and engage in a conversation about customer service and talking about, what is the education that every person needs to kind of get beyond the bricks and mortar of it. And that's a big challenge, and one that, is going to require the collective kind of good of every person who sees something or can educate or, language. So I'd say, there were areas that were a little bit more challenging for us to navigate through. But in general, it was a pretty rewarding experience to come away from and hear from people in their own community that said, yeah, this is working for me.
I think it's amazing. Built form is one thing, right? Doing the built form is something that I think we're all learning and trying to get better at. The operational side of the things that you're describing is that's education. That's exactly what that is, and trying to educate our commercial tenants and educate the retail users and educate the people who are around to try to understand what's a better way to use these spaces now that they've been built in that way. So that's a bang on. Go ahead, Luke, please.
No, I think it's important that our societal understanding of disability is broadly the medical model of disability, where people with disabilities are seen as the problem that needs to be fixed. What I think that Maayan and her team at AccessNow, what Daniels is doing, what we're doing with the StopGap Foundation and our mission to raise awareness about the importance of accessibility and inclusion is to really amplify a shift in perspective towards the social model of disability, which identifies the barriers that hold people back being physical barriers, our attitudinal barriers, and our systems and policies that really hold people back from reaching their full potential. So it's not people with disabilities that need to be fixed. It's our built environments, it's our attitudes, and it's our systems and policies that really are barriers to access.
So playing off that, Luke, what would you say, real estate developers like ourselves could do to continue to enhance our accessible awareness? Are there things from a built form, from an operational, are there things you've thought about that could be something you could tell us, help us, describe to us where we can go to continue to, as an industry, get better?
Yeah, well, you're
modeling
that right now. It's having these important conversations. It's bringing people into the room to learn, to partner with organizations like AccessNow that get people out and gather data to understand the lived experience of people with disabilities and people without disabilities. Like what is this community like, and how does it meet the needs of people who use mobility aids or don't use mobility aids? And it's learning from those voices, listening to those voices, learning and implementing what is learned in design, putting those designs out there in a testing kind of way, and then going through that design cycle of looping back and understanding, well, how did it work? That's what we did when we did our roll-throughs at the very beginning, like you mentioned. Put something out there, invited myself and a few others in to take a look and see how it was doing, and then we identified, well, this is okay, but there's definitely room for improvement. And now here we are, looping back and having discussions about how it could be done better. The design is a never-ending loop of iteration and coming back and understanding, listening. Us as a human race, we're forever evolving. So do our policies and the language we use when referring to people with disabilities, the spaces that we build, they're to evolve with us.
Sure. Maybe I'll change it slightly for you, Maayan, because thank you for that. That's great. You mentioned automatic door openers as one example in your previous comments. Are there other construction-related or design-related elements that you could touch on as things that the industry should be thinking about that you're seeing out there right now?
Yeah. So I love Twitter. I love to just throw out little tiny nuggets of things and see what people respond to. And I'm always fascinated by what catches. And a little while ago, I tweeted that I don't want assistive devices that look like hospital gear. I want things that look like jewelry. And it's just something that I was thinking about because I was looking at, a product that they were trying to market to me, and I was like, yeah, but this isn't really something that's just going to go with my outfit, It just feels awkward and not good, clunky. And so I think, when we talk about accessible design, the level of aspiration that I really want to see is that, where we move away from, there's phases, to Luke's point. You have to understand the needs of people and focus first on function, right? But once you get there, once you understand function, how can we make it feel good? How does it get beyond reminding you that you might have a need that's different from someone else to just being, something that melts into the environment and doesn't stick out like something you might see in a hospital? So I know that's a very high-level answer for you, Jake, but I think, that's what I like to do, is I like to push people to think beyond, especially when I talk to students and their job is to create prototypes or products, and I want to work on, supporting people with disabilities, and I look at it, I'm like, yeah, but would you want to carry that around? Or would you want to invite people into your home and show off your brand new bathroom? And what would make you want to do that? And so I think getting to a point where we can see accessibility as a driver for form and function together is what I would inspire and provoke builders and architects and designers to think about.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, we're trying to do that with our ADP units, which you got to see, and try to create bathrooms or kitchens that don't look like hospital environments. They look like very nice, high-end spaces to use, and you want to show off and enjoy. And that's, I think, really the point that we're trying to push forward here, is it should really meld in with the rest of the condos, the rest of the units, the rental buildings, whatever it is, as part of it. How about you, Luke? Can you think of certain things that stand out for you?
Yeah, I think my contribution to answering this question is really bringing us together with an understanding that disability is part of human nature. At some point in our lives, we'll all experience a shift in the way that we move around our communities, and for many of us, that's just through that natural aging process. Or maybe, we sprain our ankle and we have to use crutches for a little while, or I don't know, it's due to occupation and we're needing to use carts to bring packages into buildings. We become parents and we push strollers around. These shifts and these these changes in the way that we experience our community, it's natural. This is just something that happens throughout our lives. And so we just need to make sure that we are designing with the intention of that inherent human nature. That disability is part of just the natural aging process, and how we're already experiencing the benefit of services and devices, people talking and touching their touchscreen phones. Like these devices that were originally intended to help empower someone with a disability, we all benefit from in a seemingly invisible way, right? I used a electric toothbrush this morning. Did anybody else use an electric toothbrush this morning? All right, not bad. Usually it's about 50%. But like these devices that were originally intended to empower someone with a disability are just like seamlessly integrated into our everyday lives. And just imagine if all of the spaces that we live, that we learn, work, and play in were like an electric toothbrush, or maybe like a touchscreen phone, or voice recognition, or just designed in a way that creates that access intimacy, that feeling of belonging, peace, and ease,
Fantastic.
Regardless of the way you show up.
Absolutely. Shifting it a little bit, I think this is an interesting question that I thought about when knowing I was going to have the pleasure of having both of you up here. You're both incredible entrepreneurs in what you've done and what you've created. And I think sharing with the audience some maybe shared experiences or what it has been like from an entrepreneurial perspective to create the businesses and the organizations that you currently have, lessons learned, interesting tidbits for people who are out there. You mentioned students, people kind of thinking about making their own businesses. That's what you've done, an incredible feat. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I know the answer to this question. It's the F word.
You start.
All right. Well, we've talked about our frustration, and I've heard you speak about just being super frustrated about not being able to access space, and that being the driver for developing the change that we want to see happen. Like finding ourselves in conversations with other people who are experiencing similar frustrations, and just getting caught up in that negative kind of momentum, where we're just continually finding ourselves in that angry state of mind instead of choosing to divert that energy towards the action and gathering and like problem solving and doing something about the problem. So frustration is at the root of my entrepreneurial direction in life and career choice. Pass it to you.
Yeah, I definitely relate. And it's not uncommon that you'll meet an entrepreneur who saw something in the world and was like, I think it should be better. And, I think that's what it comes down to is that, and I kind of spoke to it a bit earlier, but I think we share a view of life that isn't the mainstream. And it's taught us, I'm speaking on your behalf at this point, Luke, and it's taught us to have to MacGyver a lot around the world. And what that does is it kind of trains you to be an entrepreneur, kind of whether you like it or not. Like, when I show up at a space, I'm like, oh, okay, I can't go in through here. What about there? What if I can convince all the people inside we'll meet down the street? Like, right away, I'm like, oh, I can't get the result I want. Okay, here's 700 other ways we can get it done anyway. And I think that type of training that actually people with disabilities often just naturally live through lends itself really, really well to entrepreneurship. So I think, the common thread definitely is like the frustration that what we see is different than what could be. And, you could get stuck in it. You could say, oh, this is just really unfair, and I hope somebody does something about it. But I think what we've done, and it's not a singular effort, it really is like a very mass involvement of many people, micro actions and massive actions, that we've just been able to ignite people to think about something that we know is true. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'd love to open it up to the audience or anyone virtually who maybe have some questions. I know there's some virtual questions that already came in, so maybe we'll start with a virtual question and then we'll go to a live audience question.
We've received some great questions virtually. The first one is, how do you assess how accessible a city is for people with disabilities, and how can you measure those improvements over time?
AccessNow. That nails kind of what our mission is we're doing that. We're measuring spaces by encouraging and inviting every person to contribute their perspective, and we know, similarly to what Luke had said, that this will change over time, that as we learn about different perspectives, as we learn about what we didn't know, even me, people expect that I'm an accessibility expert. I was so not that. I was a person who uses a wheelchair who expected things to be a certain way. Mm-hmm. And even in my process of building AccessNow, have I learned from many different people and their ways of life. And so accessibility is something that evolves over time. And as we measure these instances, as people contribute, something that happens in a certain day in their life, we can keep progress on track. We can actually understand, in a few years from now, how many barriers have we removed? Where were they because we identified them, and how can we work to kind of make that change? So, yeah.
Thank you. Richard Joy from Urban Land Institute. This has been really, really inspiring and positive, and thank you for this presentation. As an organization that's used to talking about the development industry, it's not infrequent that Daniels is an example of how you do it, leadership. But there's a much larger amount of the leadership of our industry that isn't Daniels, and so my question is, in the last 10 years, 25 years, where I think a lot of the industry has been aware of accessibility issues in a fairly significant way, how are we doing? What would be your assessment of beyond Daniels? What is new development, particularly residential development, commercial development, retail? I know retroactive is a challenge, but going forward from, say, even just 25 years or 10 years ago, are we moving in the right direction in a way that you think is laudatory, or a much bigger gap? I suspect the answer is the latter, but over to you.
I'm going to hop in.
Please
jump
do.
in, Luke.
Yeah.
Please do.
Yes and no. The larger residential buildings, I think, are moving towards moving towards the better, but we're still stuck in Part 9 of the building code. So the lower rise townhome style wood frame construction buildings that are still going up in a big way that are not accessible. So we're seeing walk-ups to the ground floor level, split level townhomes that are not accessible. It's a huge problem. It's a huge problem that I like whenever I see a townhome going up, the 3-story kind of wood frame townhomes with the 3 or 4 steps up to the ground floor. I see it just as a poor use of human resource. And then going an hour out of the city, I think if you have been into suburbia, that's also just such a poor use of human resource, because all of those buildings are not visitable for people that use mobility, for many people who use mobility aids. And that's a big concern for me. Yeah, it's a big concern.
What I might add is kind of two things. On that note, specifically on residential, it's really scary, the stories from the disability community about a shortage of housing, just not being able to access a place to live, being on a waiting list for 13 years. Really difficult situations. And I think, again, and we are seeing the shifts happening, but we still think of people with certain things and then everybody else. And until we start to blend that model and realize people could age in place and people could have different needs come up in their lives, until we kind of break out of the mold of like, we're going to design for one kind of person, and then we'll make all these exceptions and 10% of this and a little bit of that, until we kind of look at it holistically and look at inclusive design, I think we're always going to play catch up and try to fill the gaps of people who've been left behind. But I do see a shift happening in people's understanding that not everyone's voice has been heard. And that recognition alone, and not just from the disability community, is louder now than, in my short life, I've ever seen before. And I do think that power, when you have so many people speaking up, is something you can't ignore. And it will create dramatic changes in our understanding of living. So that's kind of what I would add to it, yeah. Oh, one more thing. Employ people with disabilities, and a lot of this will go away, is a big statement, I would say. Yeah.
Great. Anyone else in person before we go back online? Oh, do you want to? It won't go that far? Do you want to come over? Okay.
Yeah, speak up.
I'm very bad. So, first of all, you guys are amazing. Thank you for all that you do. And I'm wondering, you make a great point about just the different types of people that live together. However, there are differences. So, have you been able to touch anybody who is Black, who is who has a disability? Maybe if you could talk about that experience. I think there are some differences because back in my country, we're still lifting people because we don't have that type of accessibility. And then my second question is around what has been your experience in traveling outside of the developed country of Canada?
I'll start. That's cool. So you bring up a really important point, and something that I really like to speak to, which is this concept of intersectionality, which is so important. And when we speak about inclusion, it's not that everyone's the same. Acknowledging people's differences is part of helping to build that inclusive model. So, what we aim to do is actually allow people to show up as they are, say what their needs are, and for us to listen. Our job is actually not to ever tell people this is what you need, this is what you need, oh, you're this kind of person, you go over there. From AccessNow's perspective, our main job is to listen, record, and amplify. And so we work hard to engage all different types of communities. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your background, your ethnicity, who you love, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is our goal is to just listen and learn and use those testimonials to connect with folks that can make the changes, that can remove barriers. So, even for me, like when we walked around, wheeled around, Regent Park, I had a chance to speak with Saleh. And he told me about his experience before coming to Canada. He told me that one of his main motivations was to create like cement ramps. And that where he was living, there weren't really any ramps. And that there were points in his life where he also didn't even have access to a wheelchair. And so it really, we live in a place of privilege. And acknowledging that and using it as a model of what could be, and educating, I think, many other people around the world about, how can we get closer to that is really important. So thank you for your comment. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I can add my own journey of learning about the unique ways of experiencing life and the bias that I hold, and how I actively try to lean in to different perspectives and open myself up to hearing different voices and different ways of life, and it's this unconscious tendency to move towards what's familiar, and stopping that tendency, stopping that default, and actively trying to move towards what's not familiar. And that's been a really important process in my life that has directed me towards new experiences and new perspectives that then come into what we do at StopGap. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I want to comment also just on the fact, from Daniel's perspective, from our ADP program perspective, we created a number of features that, consistently we're going to be going into buildings, but we definitely took the approach that we want to make sure that customization can happen. Everybody's different. There's opportunities. If somebody comes in and said, I'm looking for something else, we need that flexibility because, again, people have differences, people have different needs. So being able to address that, be aware of that not one size does not fit all, and being able to prepare for that in some of our buildings where possible. We do have one more question, I think, online virtually, if you want to read it out.
Is there a list of low-hanging fruit items that we can use to improve accessibility in existing buildings?
She's looking at me.
I can hop in.
Okay.
Go, but I just interrupted you. You go for it.
I was just going to say the lowest hanging fruit is education and communication. You've got to be able to communicate, and I think that's why I started this company, is because I just couldn't get answers. Fine, you're not accessible. Can I know that? It's like a secret. It's like accessibility is like this hidden thing that you're trying to not let people know about, where for me to live my life, it's the #1 question I ask every day. So before you even address a single built environment barrier, communicate. Start with where you are, acknowledge, because it's really hard to move forward without that.
It's free.
It's free, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the freest type of work, just sharing.
Yeah. Yeah. Maayan used the term MacGyvering design and implementation. StopGap, I think, is a reflection of MacGyvering something that isn't perfect. It's not intended to be a permanent fix to the low-hanging fruit of a single-stepped storefront or entryway, but it does remove a barrier, and it does create that important dialogue to raise awareness and shift perspectives. So that awareness raising is free, it's powerful, it brings people together, and it is that first step towards more change that can happen beyond that step.
Excellent. Thank you. So, Luke, I want to thank you for your time spending with us up here. Really great to have you. Really great to see you again. So thank you again, Maayan. Excellent. The MAP mission in Regent Park, I think, was a great success. I think the takeaway from us is it is a journey. There's much more to learn. If you're up for it, we have another 20 acres in Mississauga City Center. We've been building there for 15 years. I'd love to take your team and the team that we've had here to Mississauga and explore our commercial spaces and our condo spaces and our rental and all those areas to see, you know, what we've been doing the last 15 years, what can we do better? Because I think the point is that we want to continue to push forward. We want to continue to be better and learn from some of these things that we're taking on. That's our goal in all of this as well. So thank you very much for your time. And everyone here today, thank you for being here. And everyone online, appreciate all of your time today.